Welcome to LSB Feaster's Radio Aircheck and Classic TV channel.
This is Dallas Townsend, CBS News, New York. All federal troops assigned to Detroit because of last week's riots will be withdrawn from the city today. That's the announcement just made by Cyrus Vance, whom President Johnson assigned in Detroit as his personal representative. Vance says that law and order have been restored to Detroit. Large-scale racial rioting has subsided, but scattered outbreaks occurred during the night in several American cities. Snipers exchanged fire with police in Providence, Rhode Island, and Negro youths did some rock throwing in a predominantly Negro area of South Providence. At least 19 persons were injured, about 50 arrested. 100 Rhode Island State Police were sent into the area, and the National Guard was alerted but not used. Milwaukee had several hours of sniping and other violence, much of the sniping aimed at a police command post in the Negro district. Police Chief Harold Breyer now reports the city is under control after 3 nights of disorders, but the curfew will go back into effect at 7 p.m. and the state of emergency has not yet been lifted. Trouble occurred on the Chicago South Side. Several stores were hit by firebombs, but police eventually brought the situation under control. And there was trouble also in the largely Negro community of Wyandanch, Long Island, about 35 miles east of New York City. Rocks and firebombs were thrown there, and fire broke out in an elementary school, but it all ended before dawn. Back to the news after this message.
Hello?
Mrs. Giles?
Yes.
How are you, ma'am?
Well, I'm pretty good.
I'm from the Keebler Bakers, the people who make Streetman, Heckman, and Supreme brand cookies. Do you use our products?
Yes, I do.
Do you eat any of our cookies?
Oh, yes. Oh, I like the chocolate cookies.
The coconut chocolate drop cookies.
Oh, I love them.
Do you like coconut chocolate drop cookies being in a bag?
Yes, I just keep mine in the bag. And I put them in a jar I have, but I just put bag and all in.
Have you found that Keebler's is the closest to home-baked cookies you've ever tasted?
Well, yes, I like them a lot. I can go through a bag or more a week. Well, I like to pick up a couple of cookies and keep going on my way and eat them as I'm going.
Mrs. Giles, you're living proof of our feeling that store-bought cookies don't taste store-bought if they're Keebler cookies. Thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome.
Goodbye, ma'am.
Bye.
About half an hour from now, the Senate Judiciary Committee opens hearings on the anti-riot bill, which would make it a federal crime to cross state lines with intent to incite riot. The measure has already been approved by the House, but is stirring up considerable opposition in the Senate. Many senators argue in brief it would be of doubtful value in preventing a riot, and Democrat Sam Ervin of North Carolina says it would be impossible to prove anyway what was in a man's mind as he crossed the state line. American authorities in Saigon today report the loss of 6 more American aircraft. They also report 3 accidental attacks on troops and civilians. One of these mistaken attacks was made by Army helicopters, another by Army artillery, the third by Air Force jet planes. Near Saigon, communist gunners attacked an American merchant ship in the channel leading to the South China Sea. No report about damage in either this incident or another one involving an attack on a second ship in the same area. CBS News White House correspondent Dan Rather reports that President Johnson may be in the process of deciding whether to make still another peace gesture to Hanoi. According to Rather, one source who should know thinks the odds are better than even that Mr. Johnson will attempt a reduction in bombing, if not an outright pause, near the date of the South Vietnamese presidential election in September. Presidential envoys Maxwell Taylor and Clark Clifford, visiting our allies in the Southeast Asia conflict, confer today in South Korea. And we'll get that story from John Stickler in Seoul.
The subject of discussion is the war in Vietnam and what can be done to improve the effectiveness of the joint military efforts there. Korea currently has some 46,000 troops stationed in Vietnam, and their combat record to date is most impressive. The Clifford-Taylor mission has denied that it will specifically request additional troops, but the Korean government is fully expecting such a request. The answer for the immediate future will be no, for several reasons. Foremost among these is the fact that South Korea is under increasingly heavy pressure from the communist North, both political and military, and cannot spare any more of its military forces, which guard this little republic from attack. John Stickler, Seoul.
Fire broke out today on a British freighter in the Atlantic about 500 miles west of Ireland. One crewman died, but the Royal Air Force now reports the fire apparently is under control. A spokesman for the owners says the dead crewman may have been stricken while fighting the blaze.
In hot, sticky weather, a simple talc or dusting powder just isn't enough. It can't give you deodorant protection. But now you can use Ammon's medicated powder, a body powder that provides deodorant action while it soothes and comforts your skin. Ammon's powder helps keep you fresh all over for hours. And no simple talc or dusting powder does that. Be comfortable and nice to be near. Use Ammon's medicated powder every day.
The Institute for Strategic Studies in London has taken a look across the Channel, and it now comes up with this report about French military plans. As early as next year, it says, France may begin deploying intermediate-range rockets based either on land or on submarines. This would be an independent French strategic force. The Institute, which is a private agency, says the effort has cost France $10 billion, and the driving force behind it, according to the Institute, is Charles de Gaulle. President de Gaulle is vacationing today 120 miles from Paris without further comment on the controversy over his repeated call for a free Quebec. Yesterday, the Canadian government again emphasized that any outside interference in Canadian affairs is unacceptable. A formal statement to that effect was issued after Prime Minister Pearson discussed the problem at some length with his cabinet. Whether de Gaulle plans a further response is not known. French newspapers, for the most part, remain highly critical of the president. One of them says General de Gaulle's foreign policy more and more compromises French prestige. Another calls him unbearable. Coincidentally, de Gaulle's support for the separatist movement in Canada has been followed now by a revolt in one small corner of Great Britain. The Isle of Man, located in the Irish Sea off northern England, is complaining about what it calls colonial oppression on the part of London. The issue centers on British legislation banning pirate radio stations just outside territorial waters. One of these stations is anchored just off the Isle of Man, and London makes it clear the bill applies to that one as well as all the others. The island's leaders say this violates the freedom of self-governing democracy, and next week their parliament will pass a resolution demanding that the UN intervene. Charles Collingwood in London notes there is a slight legal question because the Isle of Man enjoys a vague and largely formal status of semi-autonomy in certain fields.
People ask, what does a dull guy like me, Jackie Vernon, do for entertainment? I do fun things like go to the park and watch the swingers or race pigeons for the peanuts. But for most fun, I squeeze real lemon plastic squeeze lemons. From 10 paces, I can squirt that lemon juice on my favorite dish, Triple A King. Try it yourself. Real lemon reconstituted lemon juice in the handy plastic squeeze lemons. Not only are they fun for food, but you can squirt back at grapefruit.
A member of the French Parliament has returned to Paris after heading a parliamentary delegation to Cairo. This man quotes President Nasser as saying that a peaceful solution of the Arab-Israeli problem is possible based on settlement of the Arab refugee issue through creation of a sort of Palestine confederation with Israel. But no confirmation from President Nasser, and now new shooting reportedly has broken out between Israeli and Jordanian forces operating across the River Jordan. This is Dallas Townsend, CBS News, New York.